Welcome to Art in the AM. My name is Jamie, and today is part of the series that I'm doing this year that I am calling the ABCs of Art. So I am working in a watercolor journal. It is a 5.5 by 8.5. I feel like that's a good size for when I'm doing just, trying out things and just experimenting and things like that. So it works really well for this ABCs of Art. So I started at the beginning of the year, and I did leave a blank page at the beginning that I thought that I might make an index of the words. I am going to have a list of all of the words for the entire year. So I'm up to E today, and I should have that list this week. And it will have all of the words for the whole year. So that way you'll know on Mondays maybe which word you are most interested in to make sure that you watch that video. So I do plan on having that list soon. If you want that list, just put list in the comments and I'll make sure that I get that list to you specifically. But the first week I am working back to back. So I'm working on both sides of the pages. They're nice and thick in this book. They're 140 pounds for the weight of the pages, so it works really well for a lot of different media. And one of the things that I love to do is to just get women to be more creative using mixed media. And these pages accept all different kinds of media. So we talked about art for the letter A. I talked about blending. So this beautiful quinacridone magenta color for blending. I showed a couple of different ways to do that. The next week I talked about color and making a color wheel. Let me know if you created a color wheel. I saw a couple of them. Usually anyone who watches my videos and tries out the ideas, they post those in my Art Journaling 101 group, which is kind of my group if you want to share, what we're doing here and art journaling, which by the way, it's a new month. It's February. So I have started a new list of prompts hi there, Gail. I've started a new list of prompts in my Art Journaling 101 for February, and it is hearts. So I'm going to show you a couple of my books from previous years. And if you want to follow along and do those prompts, there's one for every day of this month, and you can share those over there too. Today is splatter hearts. So I'll show you, I think I have 2 of those. I'll show you those in the book. So we did color, and then last week I showed about D for drawing, and I showed how to use a grid to draw something that is in front of, like a printed out photo. And I have used that method for such a long time that now I don't need a grid as much, but I showed how to do that. So if you've always wanted to draw better and you want a technique that works, and I gave a couple of different tips of things that you can do. If you watched last week, if you want to put those in the comments, I think I gave 2 different tips. But that is what I drew last week. And then after the video, I kind of traced it in an ultrafine Sharpie marker. And that was how I got like the thicker lines on there. So today for the letter E, I actually had a different idea in mind, but to go along with the drawing and the color really kind of, oh, was that right, Gail? That's kind of odd because I don't see a comment that it is like slow reception or bad connection or anything like that. So maybe go out, come back in and see if that might work. Good morning, Janet. So I am going to do a particular media, and it is an ebony pencil. So for the letter E, it's an ebony pencil. And I do things like this where it is, so Kathy said the little viewfinder was one of the tips that I talked about to really mask off and cover up so that it flips on the creative side of your brain and really like turns off that verbal naming side, the left side of your brain. So this Ebony pencil is a tool, a media that I used when I taught high school art, and especially the drawing classes. This was one of the materials that they had to have, or the media that they had to have. And we provided with their supply fees for them. And we taught how to do a lot of different things with this Ebony pencil, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So something like this is more what I call like a product review, and I'm actually doing that inside of my Start Creating Mixed Media membership. So every month I do a product review. I talk about how much it is and where you can get it and what you can do with it, and you know, all of those things. So it's very similar to what I do in there. And I'll talk just a little bit more about that because today I'm doing a tutorial later this afternoon in there that I'm really excited about. So here's what we're going to do with the Ebony pencil. We are going to create what I showed on this color wheel, which is this grayscale of 10 different values of gray. So values of gray. And they go all the way from white to black. Now, if you are using like a regular number 2, you know, a mechanical pencil, you would never be able to get that black. With the Ebony pencil, you can. And that's why we're going to be using that. So if you would like to do this with me today, you will just need a piece of paper. This is not actually the best paper to do this, but I'm going to show you how to get around it. Copy paper. Just use like copy paper is really the best paper because it's smooth. And I'm going to be using a ruler. I like my metal ruler because it doesn't bend around, and when I'm cutting with an X-Acto knife, it doesn't cut into the metal. I seem to do that with my like plastic rulers, and I'll cut into the ruler. So I use a metal ruler, and I'm just going to use the width of the ruler. So I'm not really going to do measuring as much as I am just going to use the ruler. And we're going to create a grayscale. And I'm going to share with you some of the tips that I shared with my drawing students about how to use the Ebony pencil. It is all about control. It is not a talent. It is not something like a gift that you were born with. It is a skill. And that was what I taught, and how I taught at the high school was I taught skills. There are some people who naturally have, they can grasp those skills quicker, and then they can use them in a more creative way quicker. And then there are some people who learning the skill gives them the confidence that they can use the materials effectively. So that is what we're going to do today. I'm going to create a grayscale, and this grayscale, if I don't have my color wheel that has the grayscale on there, I can use my grayscale that I'm going to create as reference. And I'm just going to tell you a little secret right now. If you can have a grayscale that you can follow, you will be thinking like an artist, and you will be able to start seeing like an artist sees. And that is one of the keys to making drawings, paintings, mixed media, any kind of artwork, because value is what creates interest. It's what creates something that is finished. It's what creates something that is like dynamic. Hi Sue, hi Lori. Oh, I see Angie popping on too. I probably had a natural understanding of value, but I didn't know how to describe it until I went to study in college and get a degree in art education. So my degree is in teaching other people how to practice skills and how to learn skills. And I feel like value and this grayscale is one of the things that I kind of understood naturally because I was already seeing like an artist. But I'm telling you what, I'll show you some examples. This is what makes all the difference. And I had a different word picked out for today. And when I started thinking about it, I'm like, no, I have to do this. So we're going to do a grayscale. I'm going to go ahead and flip this down so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Since my paper is, what I want to say, since it's vertical, I'm going to do the grayscale vertical. And I'm just going to use the width of the ruler. And I'm just going to kind of put it like in the middle of the paper. And I'm going to use, and I think, how many do I have here? So this paper is like 8 inches. So I'm going to have to do the boxes a little bit smaller than the width of the, so I'll figure that out. I'll figure out how to make that work. I think I have an idea. I'm going to use the centimeters and I'll be able to do that. So I'm just going to literally just trace the width of the ruler. And I'm using a regular number 2 pencil to do that. And then I'm going to turn it this way. So I will start with the white here and go down. And you'll see what it is that I'm doing. So I am going to measure this a little bit because I want the boxes to be all the same. So we've got, I'm going to start about here. Let's see if I can kind of figure out to get 10, that's 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That works out pretty well. I'm not going to measure on the other side. I'm just going to, you really just want, and I'm going to do these lines pretty lightly, especially on the white area here, because I really don't want to be able to see those lines. So I'm trying to get them, here, line it up this way. So happy February, by the way. We are supposed to get more snow tomorrow. I think up to like 5 inches. I don't know where you live, but I'm kind of over the snow. I know Janet, where she lives, she gets lots of snow. It just feels like a lot this year because we got like, I don't know, 10 inches or something last week. I like the snow and I like having the seasons, but like after one good snow, I'm kind of ready for warm weather, ready for spring. So I like the different seasons, but definitely prefer spring and summer. I do like fall. I like the leaves changing and okay. So I have 10 boxes on here. And I know you probably can't, just very lightly kind of have those boxed in. And I am going to try to be following this scale here. So it starts with white. I feel like in here it gets dark pretty quick. And, you know, these are kind of similar. So I may do a couple of little lighter values in there. So we'll see, but that's what I'm going to be following. Now I'm going to switch to my Ebony pencil. A number 2 pencil is a 2B, like the letter B. And it is right in the middle kind of soft leads and hard leads. It's really more like a hard lead. And that's why if you press down in the paper, it will make a groove in the paper that even if you erase that groove where you've pressed down, you've actually made an imprint into the paper, is there. An ebony pencil is a really soft lead. And what we taught students, I say we, there was another art teacher and I that worked together, and we would do a lot of the same classes. So that's when I taught my drawing classes to control the ebony pencil. We did not have them use an eraser, like a white eraser like this, or This is a kneaded eraser, which is not very soft. You have to really kind of play with it. We did not let them use an eraser. So we actually taught them how to control the pencil and the pressure of the strokes of how they press down. And a lot of times it's harder to do the light values. So I am actually going to flip my book around and I'm going to do the dark value first. And you'll see what a nice black value you can get with this ebony pencil. The other thing that we taught our students is to do pencil strokes all going in the same direction. And just kind of do short little strokes and really kind of build up the value. So I'm not going to start really dark. I'm just going to kind of press down and try to get an even pressure. And I kind of go like from one side to the other. I got a little bit lighter on this side, so then I'll kind of go back over that a little. So I'm really just trying to create like an even value where it all looks the same. Because this paper is textured, it's going to take a lot for me to kind of fill that all in. If you do this on copy paper, which I would suggest, if you don't do anything else during the month of February, creative in any way, create a value scale for yourself. You will go back and use it. You will start to see the difference in what value can make. If you feel like something looks really flat, do you know what I mean? Like flat on your painting, flat on a drawing, flat on a mixed media piece, it's probably because your values are all right here. They're all like these kind of middle values. You don't have any whites and you don't have any dark colors or values. You know, dark values of the colors that you're using. You can really start to see that if you take a photo and probably just in whatever, right here on the end, I do kind of go just to like do the outline. We taught our students not to do that, to try to really have control right up to the edge. And sometimes I kind of forget that. I'm going to show you this when I have it all filled in, and you'll be able to see, because this paper is so textured that it's really going to take me a lot of time to fill in all of the spaces in there. Because look, it's really dark up in here because I pressed down a little bit harder and there's a lot of white spaces in there. So now I'm going to kind of go back over and I am going to press down a little bit harder. And that will start to fill in all of those little, you know, those little bumps in the paper. But I will show you a couple of the portraits. Tell me if you've been seeing the portraits that I've been doing. I've been having so much fun with those and just trying different things. And last night I was working till like 1:30 in the morning on my portrait and really wanted to focus on blending and creating flesh tones and just seeing values. And I'm going to show you a couple of things on there that I did right at the end that made it feel finished. If you aren't sure if a piece that you're doing, a painting, a drawing, mixed media is finished, probably it's because you don't have enough values in there. And when you add the darks and the white on there, like, oh, that's what it needed. So I will show you the one that I did last night. Yeah, this is really much more difficult on this paper. But the second one here is better. And I'm just trying to go over and kind of fill in. And this is still really more of kind of a medium dark value. I'm still going to go over it more as I fill in some of those little bumps and get even a darker value. You know, so this value might be kind of, you know, more like over in one of these boxes here. So you can still see there's a lot of little white spaces because the paper is so bumpy. Hi there, Sandy. And just filling that in. If you did this on copy paper, it would be so much different. Okay, let me do one more pass, kind of pressing down a little bit harder so you can really see how dark you can get this ebony pencil. And that is what starts to fill in all of those little bumps. So it's about the pressure that you're putting on the pencil. It's about how hard and how even you're putting the pressure. So as I'm going across the page, I'm putting the even amount of pressure. And if you're doing this with a painting, this is your darkest value. You may have black on your painting. I know a lot of artists don't even use black. And I will show you the portrait that I did last night. I use a little bit of black, but I'll show you what I did instead of the black. So this is filling in. Sometimes we would teach the students to go like in little circles, and that really helped too. And so I'm really trying to control all the way to the edge there. If you feel like something is flat on your painting, you probably need a dark value. You probably need a dark value to make it look more 3D, not flat, more realistic, really. So I'm just going to define this edge a little bit. I still have a lot of those little bumps. I'm going to see if I can't kind of fill those in, and you can really get an idea how dark you can get. You would never be able to get this with a regular number 2 pencil because of the graphite. It just doesn't have the same intensity as this ebony pencil. This is getting pretty good now. And I may still go over one more time just to kind of fill in a little bit of the bumps. But look how dark you can get this ebony pencil. You would never be able to get that with graphite. I'm going to do the rest of these. This one at the very end is going to be white. And this is probably the one you're going to have the most problem with because it takes such a light pressure. Look how, I mean, that value is so light. It's just barely pressing down on your pencil. And I would say between doing this and then easing up the pressure, those are the two that if you can get those, you'll be able to do these a little bit easier. So let me go ahead and show you the portrait that I did last night. And I want to show you the light lights and the dark darks. So I'm just going to kind of flip through some of these here. And you can kind of see some of them I don't have the darker values. And you can see where, like this one definitely has some really light values, but then it has the dark values. So it has them like right next to each other. This one obviously has the darker. This one is all mainly kind of the medium values, but then there are some dark spots and around her eyes. Again, like the eye and the eyelashes, that contrast between the light and the dark. And even this one, I started with a black piece of paper and added the colors to it, but you can see there's some white in the eyes and then a little bit in the nose, the lips, you know, the places where I wanted those to pop a little bit. I wish I could remember exactly how I did that one. I don't really remember. This one, the kind of the white in her eyes and the teeth, and there's like some of the darker. But let me go ahead and show you the one that I just did last night. And you can definitely see like in this one where there's the darks against you know, the lighter areas like in the nose there and in the forehead. And the same with that one there. So this one is the one that I did last night. And I will show you, this is the image that I used. So that is the image that I used for reference. And I actually pushed the values even a little bit more. Do you see how in her eyes, it's not quite as dark? And then I even pushed those a little bit darker to really make those stand out. And down in here, that's not really a black. So a lot of what I used was a burnt sienna, and then I would put like a dark blue in there, or even a magenta, like a really dark purple kind of underneath there, mixed in with a little bit of that burnt sienna is what made this color underneath here. The only places that I really used black were kind of like in the hair, and really even in the hair there's a lot of purple in there. I have a little bit of black in the eyes and the just the little details. So one of the last things that I did was the black in her eye, the black eyelashes, a little teeny black right here, a little teeny black right there, just a couple of little places where there's a dark. And then a few of the places where I added the highlights, a little bit in her ear, you know, in her forehead, definitely the nose, the highlight in the lips. The eyes are a really light value. There's no place on here that's really a bright white. Even the color that I used for the eyes is a bleached sand color. But next to the black that I did use for the eyelashes and kind of, you know, the center of her eye and things like that, it looks white. It looks like a, you know, a much lighter value. This really did not look finished until I did those last two details, the darkest darks and then the whitest whites, or the light value and the dark value. I'm telling you, if you look at a painting and it feels like it's just very flat and it's not finished, it's probably because you just need to add a few highlights, a few places where there's a lighter value. And, you know, on the portrait, it's a little bit different, but any painting that you do, add a few highlights, add a few places where there's just the brightest color. And usually that's the very last thing that you do. And it'll really make those areas pop. And what that means is it will make them pop forward. So this forehead, because it's rounded, the nose, you know, it's rounded, you want those parts to pop forward. You want those to be the lightest values, and even in the cheek here. And what I did, one of the very last things was kind of add these darker kind of values in here, which made this pop forward. So anytime you can have the contrast between like a lighter and a darker, just like with the eye and the eyelashes and things, those dark and lights in there, that contrast, that is what makes something feel dramatic and finished and just have a full range of values. And I don't even know if you could really see this up close in a photo in the camera like this. I can look at it up close and see there are definitely some areas where I need to have different values. One of them is these lines in here. It's too much of a line. We don't have a line like that on our arms and our shoulders. So the values in there, I need to kind of adjust those a little bit. And I noticed kind of in the shoulder right in here is a little too much of a line kind of in there. So values, they are so important, so helpful if you create a grayscale like this so that you can be able to use it. Hello, Shannon. I wanted to tell you one last thing. Let me take a drink of water here too. If you would like to do something every day and you could practice the grayscale with these two, is the Art Journaling 101 challenge that I have, the prompts that I put in there for the month of February are all hearts. And I actually printed out the list, put it in this journal a couple of years ago when I did this one, and then I would check off when I did those. And I just have all different ones in there. This was a nice little square journal that really gave me, it was just the right size. It wasn't even as big as the journal that I have for the grayscale. And that was like another little, do you recognize this painting for the American Gothic? I was teaching the American Gothic, and Grant Wood, who is the artist of that painting. So just hearts, all different kinds of ways to do hearts. It's so much fun to be able to play around, and we're so familiar with hearts, all the different things. Any kind of idea that I see on Pinterest, any kind of, reel that I watch, I can translate that idea into a heart. And just using that idea, this was another one for Grant Wood on there, and his little landscapes that he would do. Oh, and then this one was like a 2-page one with the polka dots. And then I did do this one in, a larger format too. And just all kinds of different ways. If you just want to do something like a little creative every day and just use some of your art supplies, you could literally, this is 6 different hearts glued into really make a color wheel. It's kind of like a color wheel idea. So just in the different colors there. I had these little spirals, which I loved. So it's just kind of a fun way. The heart prompts are probably my second favorite after the pumpkins that we do in October. So I would encourage you, if you want something to be motivated to create a little bit every day, get an Art Journaling 101, look for the prompt list and featured, and you will have 28 ideas of different kinds of hearts. You can always do your own too, but 28 different ideas for kinds of hearts. And it's just like a fun way. People are starting to share those in there to do something creative and use all of those ideas that you keep collecting photos and reels and the things on Pinterest, actually do something with them and use those ideas and make a heart inside of the inside of a journal. And it can be any kind of journal. Anyway, that is the ABCs of art for the letter E using the Ebony pencil. Look for a photo of my completed value scale. And I would love if you do a value scale to post it. Post it in Art Journaling 101. If you want to post it on your profile and, just tag Creations of Studio 39, you can do that too. And then that way I can be able to see it. But I would love to be able to see. And, oh, hey there, Cindy. I just saw we use an Ebony pencil for the letter E, an Ebony pencil. Yeah. So charcoal, you could do a grayscale. You could do a value scale with charcoal. I taught it with the Ebony pencil when I taught high school to teach them how to really control the pressure. And with the charcoal, it's not exactly the same. So I would try it with an Ebony pencil, and you can create a value scale for all kinds of different things. You can actually create a value scale with each color that you use and go from, the lightest value to the darkest value. We had to do all kinds of studies like that when I was in college. So I hope that you do create a value scale, because I feel like that could be the missing thing. That could be the missing thing in your artwork to make it look complete and finished and really more dynamic, more interesting for the viewer, because it'll make it look more three-dimensional, more realistic with the dark values and the light values. And using the Ebony pencil and learning to control that is a great skill for you to be able to learn too. So hope you have a great week, and I will be back next week for the letter F in the ABCs of art. I'll see you then.